let me just say that, as you know, we are celebrating 40 years of independence this year. And July 10th, 1973, we became a nation. But prior to that, in December of 1972, there was a constitutional conference in Britain, in London, and representatives of the Bahamas met with representatives of Great Britain because they were the colonial power. And so discussions took place in order to finalize the form of the Constitution. Representing the Bahamas were members of the then government and members of the then opposition. And who we are honoring today are members of the government of the day at that time and the opposition at that time, who were at that constitutional conference as official delegates, and therefore played a significant role in finalizing that particular document, which is the supreme law of the Bahamas. If you look on your screen, you can see a shot of the constitutional conference, several shots of it. And a number of those persons, if you look at those pictures, you'll note that a number of those persons are now deceased. And today we wanted to recognize those original delegates and framers of the Constitution who are still with us. They are now very mature in age, but we are very pleased that we were able to get most of them to join us here this morning. And therefore it's very significant in our 40th year that we pay honor to them and acknowledge the importance of the role they've played in creating the current Constitution of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Good morning once again, everyone. Protocol having already been established, it's a pleasure to be here this morning on such an historic occasion. This is in keeping with our ministry's mandate, which is leading national, spiritual, and social change for 2013. And so we have an historic event, and it's brought on by, as many of you would be aware, the Prime Minister's, the Honorable Perry G. Christie's declaration and appointment of a constitutional commission. And the purpose of that body, in short, is to review and perhaps look at ways of amending the 1973 Constitution. And so in doing so, we've invited the persons who have framed or who have drafted the Constitution. We have 5 of the 6 survivors, and so it's certainly an honor to be in their presence this morning. And so National Constitution Day is BFM's and Dr. Munro's vision for recognizing the framers of our Constitution, as well as to educate you, the members, attenders, and the wider public as to the need to be involved in the current discussions on amending our Constitution. And so we are privileged to be here, and we look forward to an exciting day where not only the framers will be recognized, but they will have an opportunity to share with you what was in their mindset during the 1972 Constitutional Conference, and why are there certain provisions in our Constitution. And so this is history in the making, and therefore I would join with Merit in welcoming you all to National Constitution Day at Bahamas Faith Ministries.
We would at this time like to invite Dr. Munro to join us on stage. As he's joining us, let me also say that at the Constitutional Conference, there were other persons from the Bahamas. We also have with us someone who was a part of the delegation of the then official opposition. And while he was not an official delegate to the Constitutional Conference, He played an integral role in supporting the official delegates of the opposition by doing research on a number of issues related to the Constitution and other Commonwealth countries. So I'd like to acknowledge especially Mr. J. Henry Bosser, QC, who was a part of the opposition's team. Good to have you with us, sir. We have recorded presentations of the biographies of the honorees, and so I will invite the first track to play, which is that of His Excellency, the Governor General, Sir Arthur Foulkes.
Known for its natural wonders, the beautiful island of Inagua is the birthplace of our first honoree. Arthur Alexander Foulkes was born on the 11th of May, 1928, to the late Dr. William A. Foulkes and Julie Foulkes. Young Arthur was educated in the public school system in Matthewtown, Inagua, and Nassau. His parents instilled in their children biblical principles, the importance of having a sound education, and the importance of making a significant contribution to one's country. These principles became the hallmark of Sir Arthur's life and have served as the foundation of his success today. Shortly after he graduated from high school, Sir Arthur began his professional career as a newspaper linotype operator at the Nassau Guardian. In 1948, he joined the Tribune as a linotype operator and quickly rose through the ranks as an esteemed journalist, serving in the capacities of reporter and newspaper editor, respectively. From 1962 to 1967, Sir Arthur was the founding editor of the Bahamian Times, the official newspaper of the Progressive Liberal Party. This newspaper played a pivotal role in the campaign for majority rule, which was achieved in the general election of the 10th of January, 1967. Because of his love of country and dedication to duty, Sir Arthur entered the political arena in the 1960s. In 1967, he was elected to the House of Assembly, and during this administration, he was appointed Minister of Communication and later Minister of Tourism. In 1972 and 1977, he was appointed to the Senate, and in 1982, he was re-elected to the House of Assembly. Sir Arthur Foulkes is one of the founding members of the Free National Movement, and in 1972, he was selected to attend the Bahamas Independence Constitutional Conference in London, England. In 1992, Sir Arthur entered the diplomatic service. He was appointed the High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, and he also served as an ambassador to France, Germany, Italy, Belgium, and the European Union. In 1999, he was appointed the first non-resident Bahamas ambassador to the People's Republic of China and non-resident ambassador to the Republic of Cuba. Sir Arthur is also the founding member of the China-Bahamas Friendship Association. He is married to the beautiful Lady Joan Foulkes. For more than 50 years, Sir Arthur has committed his life to serving the Bahamas. His contribution to the Bahamas and the Bahamian people in effecting political, social, and economic change has led to his current position. On the 14th of April, 2010, Sir Arthur became the 8th Bahamian Governor General of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. During this auspicious occasion, the former Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Hubert Alexander Ingram, stated, "You must be credited with playing a pivotal role in the creation of a viable two-party system in our country, failing which our democracy would have been much diminished. For what you have so far contributed to our country, we express our lasting gratitude. For what you shall contribute to our nation and to our lives, we thank you in keen and confident anticipation." Indeed, Sir Arthur has served our country with distinction at every level, and we are grateful for his continued contribution to the development of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. BFM family and friends, please stand as we salute our honoree, the current Governor General of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, His Excellency Sir Arthur Alexander Foulkes.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. We'll proceed to the next honoree, which is His Excellency the Honorable Arthur Dion Hanna.
Former Governor General of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, 1st February 2006 through to 14th April 2010. His Excellency Arthur Dion Hanna was sworn in as the 7th Governor General by Chief Justice Sir Burton Hall on February 1st, 2006. His Excellency replaced Acting Governor General Paul Adderley, who served in the position since December 2005 following the retirement of Dame Ivy Dumont on November 30th, 2005. Born to Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Albert Hanna on March 7, 1928, His Excellency is a native of Pompey Bay, Acklands. He attended the Government High School in Nassau and later entered the University of Bristol and Inner Temple in the United Kingdom, where he obtained a law degree. He was called to the English bar by the Inner Temple and in 1955 was admitted to the Bahamas bar as counsel and attorney. In 1956, Mr. Hanna joined the Progressive Liberal Party and was elected to serve on its executive board. In March 1956, he was nominated along with the late Samuel White to contest a Cat Island seat in the general election. However, they lost. He was re-elected in the 1962 general election and was appointed to the delegation that represented the PLP at a constitutional conference in the United Kingdom. As a legislator, Mr. Hanna has made a major contribution to the political and social development of the Bahamas. He is considered a champion of civil rights, having vigorously opposed any form of racial discrimination. He is the architect of Bahamianization, a policy which placed Bahamians first. After he watched the Union Jack flutter down to be replaced by the Bahamian standard during the independence ceremony on July 10, 1973 at Clifford Park, he told a friend, "I myself had only one major political aim, and that was to assist this country to achieve complete sovereignty. Everything I did or said was to this end." Mr. Hanna was appointed Deputy Prime Minister and Government Leader in the House of Assembly in 1967, and he held the position until his resignation from Cabinet in 1984. As a member of Cabinet, Mr. Hanna served as Minister of Education, Minister of Trade and Industry, Minister of Home Affairs with responsibility for immigration, and Minister of Finance with added responsibility for the public service. He has 4 surviving children: Arthur Dion Jr., Mark, Lindsay, Glennis Hanna Martin, and Dawn Victoria Hanna. Ladies and gentlemen, BFM family, please stand as we welcome our honoree, His Excellency Arthur D. Hanna.
I'd just like to read what it says on the award, and it says the same thing on all of them. This one says, "Presented to the Honorable Arthur D. Hanna, in acknowledgement of your role as one of the framers of the Bahamas Constitution by Bahamas Faith Ministries, March 24th, 2013.
Have the next clip, that is Orville Turnquest.
Our next honoree was born on the 19th of July, 1929, to the late Robert and Gwendolyn Turnquest. Orville Alton Turnquest was reared in the former slave village of Grantstown. He was named head boy of V Government High School in 1945, and in 1957 he obtained an LLB degree with honors from the University of London. He was admitted to the Bahamas Bar in 1953, shortly after completing the local apprenticeship program. And in 1960, he was admitted to the English Bar. He has had an illustrious career as a barrister at law and a counsel and attorney at law. Sir Orville entered the political arena during the 1950s. During the course of his political tenure, he was bestowed the following honors. He is a Queen's Counsel, a former magistrate, a former coroner, a former president of the Bahamas Bar Association, a former Secretary General of the Progressive Liberal Party, a former Deputy Leader of the Free National Movement, a former Deputy Prime Minister, a former Attorney General, a former Minister of Foreign Affairs, and a former Director of Education. In 1972, Sir Orville was a delegate at the Bahamas Constitutional Conference in London, England. On Tuesday, the 3rd of January 1995, Sir Orville succeeded His Excellency Sir Clifford Darling and was sworn in as the 5th Governor-General of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. He is a devout Anglican. He has served as the Chancellor of the Diocese of Nassau and the Bahamas, including the Turks and Caicos Island, and he has served on several executive bodies of the Anglican Church. Sir Orville was married to his high school sweetheart, the late Lady Edith Louise Turnquest, and he's the father of 3 children. Ladies and gentlemen, BFM family, please stand as we welcome our honoree, His Excellency Sir Orville Alton Turnquest, GCMG, QC, LLB, JP.
We'll have the bio of our 4th recipient, and that is Mr. A. Loftus Roker.
Born at Delectable Bay, Acklands, to Elkin and Dolores Roker, the Honorable A. Loftus Roker was born on the 25th of August, 1935, and he attended the all-age school at Pompey Bay, Acklands. He received a Cambridge School Certificate in Acklands and came to Nassau in 1953 as a student teacher. He taught at Western Senior School for 2 years, where the principal was T.G. Glover. He joined the Telecommunications Department, that is the predecessor to Batelco, and worked there for 2 years. In 1956, he became interested in politics and wanted to run in the general election, but was 2 months too young to run. In 1958, he went to London to law school at the University of London, and he joined Middle Temple, that is his Inn of Court. And he qualified as counsel and attorney at law. Then he returned home in 1962. The Honorable A. Loftus Roker practiced as counsel and attorney until the year 1971, when he became a full-time cabinet minister. In 1968, Mr. Roker ran in the Nicholstown and Berry Islands constituency, and he won his seat and became a member of Parliament in the House of Assembly. In 1971, he was made Minister of Health and Housing. In 1972, he attended the Constitutional Conference in London as an official delegate, where the Bahamian Constitution and Bahamian independence were discussed with Britain. In 1975, when the then Minister of Works, Simeon Bowe, resigned, Mr. Roker became responsible for 2 ministries as Minister of Works, plus Health and Housing. In 1977, he retained his portfolio as Minister of Works with responsibility for BEC, Batelco, and the Water and Sewerage Corporation. The new Minister of Health was newcomer Perry Christie. In 1984, Mr. Roker became Minister of National Security, including the Department of Immigration. He was also responsible for all law enforcement agencies. Mr. Roker is mostly remembered by the Bahamian public as a no-nonsense immigration minister. Mr. Roker married Ruby Livingston in 1965. Since 1987, he retired and spends a lot of time in Athens. Ladies and gentlemen, BFM family, please stand as we welcome our honoree, the Honorable A. Loftus Roker.
Thank you very much. And the final honoree, but by no means least, the Honorable George A. Smith.
George Andrew Smith was born on the beautiful island of Exuma to the late Richard F. Smith and Mildred M. Smith. He is a Roman Catholic and attended the following schools: Georgetown Elementary, Sacred Heart, Aquinas College, and St. Augustine's College. Mr. Smith was first elected to the House of Assembly on the 10th of April 1968 and served continuously for 29 years. During his sojourn as a parliamentarian, he served in the following capacities: Parliamentary Secretary, 1972 and 1973, Minister of Transport, 1973 to 1977, Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Local Government and Lands from 1977 to 1984, respectively. In 1973, he was appointed chairman of the Secretariat, which directed the Program for Independence. Mr. Smith has been credited with establishing the Bahamas as a ship registration state, and under his administration as Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, Local Government, and Lands, the Family Islands showed significant improvement through local government. Mr. Smith has 3 children. BFM family and friends, please stand as we welcome our honoree, the Honorable George Andrew Smith.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have all of our honorees on stage. Please join me in giving them another rousing round of applause.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's all stand together. I'm going to ask our fathers to please remain seated. I would like for us, first of all, to understand this moment. Mr. Clifford Darling passed away. I got a phone call from his family. When my dear father, Sir Clement Maynard, was on his deathbed, I went to his house and held his hand. And his daughter is here today. I went to visit him a few times because I knew who fathers were. Fathers are not perfect, but they are always fathers. And any family that disrespects its fathers is illegitimate. And the Word of God says, honor your fathers. It didn't say love them, you know.
You could honor someone and still necessarily don't love them. Honor your fathers and your mothers, and your days will be long. I guarantee that all of us here today, including our fine athletes and all of our young people and our children who are here today, we just extended the years of our lives. And I'd like for you, we are not sure if we will see them next year. We're not sure of that. Nothing is guaranteed. But they are the remaining fathers of our nation. And we honor the legacy of those who have passed on today. As we celebrate 40 years of independence, 40 years as a generation, their work is finished. They have given us a country. They have given us a dignity. They've given us pride as a country. They've given us a standard. They've given us guidance. And most of all, they gave us a constitution that we are proud of. They embedded in our constitution a love for God, a love for one another, and a sovereignty that the world must respect. I want you to honor the remaining fathers of the Bahamas. Let us give them the biggest appreciation as children of this nation today.
Thank you very much. Yes. We are now going into what I think is the most interesting part of this day, which is an opportunity to interact directly with our founding fathers. Let me just also say that there is an additional surviving delegate to the Constitutional Conference. His name is the Honorable Philip Bethel. He resides in Eleuthera. He has not been able to join us, but we do want to acknowledge him as well and his contribution. So your Excellencies, Honorable Gentlemen, Wentz Martin and I have the privilege of just presenting you with a few thoughts, and we invite you to respond. The first question is going to go to His Excellency, the Governor General, Sir Arthur Foulkes, and it is a question about the preamble. If the Tech Department has it ready, if they could put it on the screen for us. Now, the preamble is a bit long, but I want to read it because it's very significant, and then I'm going to pose a question. You can follow on the screen if you can. Whereas 481 years ago, the rediscovery of this family of islands, rocks and keys, heralded the rebirth of the New World, and whereas the people of this family of islands, recognizing that the preservation of their freedom will be guaranteed by a national commitment to self-discipline, industry, loyalty, unity, and an abiding respect for Christian values and the rule of law, now know ye therefore, we, the inheritors of and successors to this family of islands, recognizing the supremacy of God and believing in the fundamental rights and freedoms of the individual, do hereby proclaim in solemn praise the establishment of a free and democratic sovereign nation founded on spiritual values and in which no man, woman, or child shall ever be slave or bondsman to anyone, or their labor exploited or their lives frustrated by deprivation, and do hereby provide by these articles for the indivisible unity and creation under God of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Very, very powerful preamble. So the question, sir, is, what is the origin and purpose of the preamble, and was this something that the Bahamas delegation inserted, or was this presented to us by the British as it is currently worded? Sir Arthur.
Thank you. Well, first of all, on behalf of my colleagues, my distinguished colleagues, let me thank Dr. Monroe and his associates at the Diplomat Center for their kind invitation to be here today to worship and also to have this conversation about our Constitution. Let me also thank all of you for the heartwarming welcome that you have given us. You have made us older men, as somebody put it earlier, us mature men. Feel very good today. Thank you ever so much. Now to the question. I shall address first of all the last part of the question, the purpose of the preamble. And remember now, we are, some of us here, not all of us, 3 of us are octogenarians, and so we may have senior moments. If we do, kindly remind us where we were. First of all, a preamble is usually decorative and inspirational. But a preamble serves a more important function, which is to set out briefly and hopefully in good language the philosophical underpinnings of the document to which it is a preamble. That is fundamentally what a preamble is supposed to do. Our preamble was a creation of Bahamians. In 1969, I was assigned by Sir Lyndon Pinling, I was in his cabinet at the time, to write a preamble for our Constitution. And let me say right here, sometimes we forget that we have had 3 constitutions in the Bahamas: 64, 69, and 73. And in preparation for the 69 conference, I was asked to do a preamble. I did that, and I did not go with that delegation to London, but the delegation went to London, and at that time were told by the British government that you cannot have a preamble until you become independent. And so the preamble was left in the file. As all of you know, by the time independence came around, I was no longer in cabinet, and in fact I was in opposition. But I am told that the words that I wrote were referred to a committee of the Honorable A.D. Hanna, who is sitting with me here today, and the Honorable Paul Adderley, and that they made some adjustments and changes. And I believe, as Sir Lyndon always said, anyway, that some of my words survived. So the 3 of us had a hand in producing the preamble to our Constitution. I was also told, and perhaps Mr. Hanna can correct me if I'm wrong, that Dr. Reuben Cooper contributed the line, or the thought, the idea about respect for Christian values in our Constitution. So I should like also to give the late Dr. Cooper Mission Baptist Church, Hay Street. I thought you all know that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Our second question. Article 32 of our Constitution reads, "There shall be a Governor General of the Bahamas who shall be appointed by Her Majesty and shall hold office during Her Majesty's pleasure, and who shall be Her Majesty's representative in the Bahamas." Our question is to the Honorable A.D. Hanna. Why did we decide to retain the Queen as head of state with the Governor General as a representative rather than a Bahamian as head of state? The Honorable A.D. Hanna.
Let me say first of all that it was not our original intention to hold the monarchy, to hold on to the monarchy. That is the government of the Bahamas at the time. In fact, after the election and we now were ready to discuss the question of independence, the British government sent the minister, responsible minister at the time, came down and advised us against creating the monarchy. But Prime Minister Pinling had problems. And I think it's going to take a little while to go into that problem. But it was a problem that affected the whole of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, who are the subject of a possible invasion by foreigners. They're mainly foreigners. I don't know the details. He only gave me as much as he wanted to give me, because he was in a delicate matter, and I agreed with him 100%. And so there probably was one Bahamian involved, but basically, and this thing about Abercrombie and all that, there were no Abercrombie involved at all. The Abercrombie position was quite straightforward. The FNM had decided that independence, we were going to have independence not now. But that means no independence at all, because the election was for an independence. But we understood that. Some of our finest warriors for independence were there. And I think that they had to make a compromise with the old guard, and they came with not now. But some of us see one of the finest warriors next to me here. You know, that's one of the original ideas of independence. And of course, some of them left us, and they joined another organization, and they had their problems. But mind you, as soon as the election was over, and we had won, and that would give us the independence, the leader of the opposition at the time was in great support. And he got me and says, "Oh, now that the election is over, and the PLP had won, we now would move towards independence, do our best as quickly as possible." So they were with us 100%. And we sat down and we wrote the Constitution together. But as I said, the question of the monarchy will take a little while. But suffice it to say that, let me see if I can shorten it. Prime Minister Pinling said to me, because I was one of those fierce opponents, you know, he says, "Let's give them a fiction. You know, they foreigners, let's give them a fiction. They still think we're still part of Britain." Whatever happened, at least one of them thought I knew. And he spoke to me about what their intentions were. But I didn't know much about it. And I think Prime Minister Pinling was right to keep that to himself. Whatever he gave to me, it is in my heart. And I cannot disclose hardly anything of it. And will not. and will not. So we began as a monarchy. So the question now as we have a constitution to deal with, I think he told us, the minister told us, we're not going to understand. He said, it's a mistake you're making. So Pilling couldn't say anything why he's doing it, and I couldn't say anything either. But I'm committed to it. And others, I don't know what he said to the others, because I was one of the fierce opponents, so he had to get me off his back. And I agreed with him 100% because I understood what his position was. He protected the Bahamas. That was not the only thing, mind you, by which he protected the Bahamas. He made sure that the Bahamas, if invaded, had support that would defeat the enemy. I know something of that as well. So that now the time has come, and I think the British was quite correct, because on the anniversary of the Commonwealth, they put out someone to speak, a school teacher. And he says, they asked him, was to tell the public what is a Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is when you lose your mother and you lose your father and you don't want to give them up completely, something to that effect, that is what the Commonwealth is. She got it mixed up with the British Commonwealth. Where, so I had to write to I understand the Minister of Education thought she was good. So I had to write to the Minister of Education. I said, this is no British Commonwealth now. It's a Commonwealth of sovereign states. First of all, she's mixing it up with the Commonwealth, British Commonwealth, which contained the White Dominions of Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the Union of South Africa, and Irish Free State. That was the British Commonwealth. But what was formed afterwards, what was found was the Commonwealth of Nations. That is the name of the Commonwealth. It's the Commonwealth of Nations. We now call it the Commonwealth for short, because the Russians have something else called the Commonwealth of Nations as well. We didn't want to confuse it by using the Commonwealth of Nations all the time. Britain's only a member. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, what is more confusing, and he was quite right, is the question: the Queen is head of the Commonwealth. That was done, I think, perhaps for diplomatic reasons. There's no fighting as to who should be head of the Commonwealth. But it does not endow to the British Crown. That is what she didn't understand as well. It does not endow, they made sure it does not endow to the British Crown, but head of the Commonwealth. Well, Prime Minister Pilling, he had at the time he became president, or chairman of the Commonwealth. He was president. Is when he put the question of Mandela and the illegal and racist regime of Southern Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. I think that is something which the Commonwealth did. And I think Pilling had the responsibility of doing that, putting it forward. I don't think I can, I don't want to minimize the contribution that any one of these gentlemen make, Sir Roker and all is on the side, because they were committed, entirely committed to what they were doing. And I think we ought to, a great deal of gratitude to them, No longer, we have a constitution now. I think somebody's thinking about, put some question about amendment, Well, we have a democracy. There's many things you cannot do that I've seen put forward. So long as you have a democracy, those things you cannot do. It's full stop. If you do it, you're not a democracy. And so long as you have a democracy, you're stuck with it. The question of the Privy Council, of course, is your best guarantee of justice. It doesn't cost us one single penny. They only interpret English, Bahamas law. That's all they do. I've known of not one single thing that the Privy Council didn't do that was not Bahamian law. I think, so these are the things you think, I see it up there, out there. Nobody says anything to me these days. But I see it out there. I might make my contribution when the time comes. But that is, I say these things because sometimes we got, unfortunately, too many of us don't understand the system under which we're there. If you think back of the fundamental rights, what you going to amend? What you going to amend there? You want to amend the cut the Prime Minister's tour of duties to a minimum? You can't do it. You can't tell as a democracy. You can't tell a party that you can't elect a leader. Because I don't see much we can do about any amendment except abolish the monarchy. We have to abolish the monarchy. I agree with you 100%.
Thank you very much, Honorable A.D. Hanna. Question number 3 has to do with something he just mentioned, has to do with the powers of the Prime Minister. Now, there are a number of provisions in the Constitution that speak to the powers of the Prime Minister, and so this is a bit of a wordy question, and it may be a little difficult for us to go into it in great detail, but I'll just read the first paragraph that's up there on the screen. It says, Article 34(1)(a) and (b) of the Constitution speaks to the involvement of the Prime Minister in appointing a Deputy Governor General, and Article 39(4) provides for the Prime Minister to directly appoint 12 of 16 senators. The role the Prime Minister plays here is, as stated in Article 40, which is to ensure that the political balance of the Senate reflects that of the House of Assembly at the time. The Prime Minister is the leader of the executive, and the executive arm should be independent from the judiciary. Let me just read the next section. Article 94(1) states that the Chief Justice shall be appointed by the Governor General on the recommendation of the Prime Minister after consultation with the leader of the opposition. Similarly, Article 96, the Prime Minister can give recommendation to the Governor General on the extension of tenure of a Supreme Court Justice. The Prime Minister also has influence over the removal and suspension of a Supreme Court Justice. Moreover, the members of the Judicial and Legal Services Commission consist of persons appointed by the Prime Minister under Article 116(2). Additionally, the Prime Minister plays an integral role in the appointment of the Public Service Commission under Article 107, permanent secretaries pursuant to Article 109, diplomats and envoys, Article 111, Secretary to the Cabinet, Article 113, Public Service Commission, Article 118, the Police Commissioner, pursuant to Article 119, and there are many other provisions that relate to the powers of the Prime Minister. So the question is, and this is for Sir Orville Turnquest, why was the Prime Minister given such wide powers regarding the appointment of virtually all public bodies and officials in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas?
The way our Constitution is drafted, the Prime Minister is the head of government. He has an executive body known as the Cabinet, which works with him, over which he is also the head. And officially, the Prime Minister makes decisions after consultation with his Cabinet. So for the most part, the announcements and the powers which appear to be exercised by the Prime Minister are in fact being exercised after consultation with, and in most instances, after a decision is taken with his cabinet. So that what you see being announced in the main by the cabinet, by the Prime Minister, is really a decision of his government, of his cabinet. Now, you've heard me lace most of what I have said by saying in the main and primarily and mostly, because individuals vary. There are some strong prime ministers, I'm speaking generally, and there are some not so strong prime ministers. And so the question as worded can be a little bit misleading. It says the Prime Minister is given wide powers. The Prime Minister exercises wide powers, but usually they are the collective powers of the Prime Minister and his cabinet. Now, I think that summarizes mostly what the position is. The Prime Minister acts after consultation with his cabinet.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Question number 4. Article 8 of our Constitution states, a person born outside of the Bahamas after July 9, 1973 shall become a citizen of the Bahamas at the date of his birth, if at that date his father is a citizen of the Bahamas, otherwise by virtue of this article or Article 3, subsection 2 of this Constitution. Article 9 goes on to state that notwithstanding anything contained in the article or Article 8, a person born legitimately outside of the Bahamas after July 9, 1973, whose mother is a citizen of the Bahamas, shall be entitled, upon making application of his attaining the age of 18 years and before he attains the age of 21 years, in such manner as may be prescribed, to be registered as a citizen of the Bahamas. The question is, and we also note that Article 26 of our Constitution has an expression of discriminatory, or what is discriminatory, but one of the groups that have been left out because it covers race, place of origin, political opinions, color, and creed, but it doesn't cover gender. So the question is, and it goes to the Honorable A. Loftus Roker, why does the Constitution treat the foreign spouse and children of a Bahamian man differently than it does the foreign spouse and children of a Bahamian woman? Mr. Roker.
Thank you, sir. Before I answer or attempt to answer that question, of course, I was told I have 2 minutes, which is impossible to do.
You have more. It takes more to answer that question.
I would like to thank Dr. Miles Monroe not only for this invitation. He may or may not remember that in 2005 he held there was some leadership conference, and I was given an award, Leadership Through Politics, by Bahamas Faith Ministries, and I thank him for that. It's an indication to me that Dr. Monroe and his advisors seem to have the interests of the Bahamas at heart. The other thing which has nothing to do with the question is that I attended a service here for the late Sir Clement Maynard, who was my friend. And I listened to Dr. Munro speak at that. That is the first time I realized that this gentleman is a real Bahamian. And I listened to Sir Arthur Foulkes. And I attempted to get together with those two gentlemen afterwards. I wasn't able to do it because our time got in the way. But both of them, in their comments during that service for Sir Clement, impressed me as real Bahamians. Now, to get to the question that I was asked, I seem to remember that once ago there was a thing called domicile. Remember this? Which meant that children took the domicile of their father. And I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe that that was one of the key reasons why the foreign fathers of children born to Bahamian women were different from the children born either to a Bahamian woman or to a Bahamian and his wife. See, the wife also took the domicile of her husband. That's the way it used to be. I'm only trying to explain to you how we got at that idea. And I agreed with it at the time. The problem is, and I hear us talk about the changing of the Constitution. Well, first of all, what His Excellency Hanna didn't tell you, that after return to the Bahamas from the Constitutional Conference in 1972, a delegate from us, headed by Mr. Hanna, and included the late Paul Adderley and myself, had to go back to London to try and brush up on some matters that were left out. And that was one time when I decided that I don't care what was offered to me, I want to be a Bahamian. Mr. Hanna headed the delegation, and we met with Lord Balneil, and there was a point that we were trying to get clarified or changed. Lord Balneil said he isn't doing that, and in the end he said to us, I am not talking with you all anymore on this matter. You let Mr. Pinling call us. I said to Mr. Hanna, let's get out of this place. Let's get out of this place. No one going to insult me like that. You don't know. It's okay to say we got what we wanted. We got most of what we wanted. But the key for me was I wanted independence. That was my key. And also, I may say with respect, I noticed Mr. Hanna was quite diplomatic, maybe because he's at the diplomat center. But I remember clearly, first of all, the conference started late because the British had some other matters that they had to deal with. So we started late. Before we reached the point of citizenship and emigration, the opposition decided that they had to leave the conference because they wanted to get home for Christmas. This was in December. And they left us there to deal with the British on citizenship and immigration matters. Now when I hear them talk about who should get citizenship and all this thing, it didn't seem very important in those days. Now I hear another thing about the question of if a person live in the country for so long, why shouldn't he get citizenship, or why shouldn't he get status? We forget these little islands of rock and sand with 300,000 people. If anybody who could force their way in here and stay long enough, and then we say they're entitled to citizenship, we must be joking. I want a country that I could say, this is my country. And I'm a Bahamian, and proud to be a Bahamian. Even in the darkest hours of drugs and all of that, I was never ashamed to tell people that I am a Bahamian. Now I regard people of the Caribbean as my brothers and sisters and all of that. And anything I could do to help them, I will do that. But it cannot be at the expense of the Bahamian people. First of all, you have no respect for me. You decide to break my law, to come into my country, and then you want me to be, you, as they call it, humane. And this statement applies to anybody from England, from the United States, from Jamaica, from Mexico, from Panama, wherever you come from. That applies to them. I do not want you to respect my law when you're coming into the Bahamas. That is why I say we must be careful with amending this Constitution, because until you are satisfied, you understand what you have, you do not know where you're going. And that's the point. And since I am no longer a politician, I am going to stop at that point.
Thank you very much, the Honorable A. Loftus Roker. The passion hasn't died, obviously. Our final question is for the Honorable George Smith, and it reads as follows. Article 38 states that there shall be a Parliament of the Bahamas which shall consist of Her Majesty, a Senate, and a House of Assembly. Article 39 says the Senate shall consist of 16 members, in this Constitution referred to as senators, who shall be appointed by the Governor General by instrument under the public seal in accordance with the provisions of this article. The question, sir, is what was the original intent of the Senate, since it is not an elected body? Was it merely supposed to reflect the makeup of the House of Assembly, or was there some other purpose in mind when the Constitution was finalized?
Firstly, I want to assure you that my answer will not get the kind of response that Loftus's answer got. But there is no Bahamian who feels stronger about the issue of who we are, what our makeup ought to be, and what makes a Bahamian than Loftus Roker. You know, when we think of this Constitution, we have to remember that a lot of things happened in the Bahamas prior to the constitutional talks at London in December. Cold London, damp, wet, and it was getting near Junkanoo time in the Bahamas. And I wanted to come back home too. We barely made it, all of us. But we got here in time to celebrate Christmas. But prior to the election of '72, in Sir Lyndon's wisdom, he conducted an exercise throughout the country. The government produced a green paper that was a discussionary paper on the question of independence. And he and others, and sometimes I went in tow, traveled the length and breadth of the Bahamas. We had some frightening moments at Abaco. Some children in Long Island did a song welcoming Sir Lyndon, and they did this song about the one-eyed somebody or the other, which was intended to be abusive. But we persevered. We went the length and breadth of the Bahamas. We listened to some beautiful songs in Mayaguana. We recognized the fierce commitment to the Bahamas of people in Acklands, and we saw how people on other islands embraced foreigners and was concerned about how foreigners would fare in the Bahamas, particularly visitors. We conducted meetings in New Providence and a massive conference at now Harrow Road, the A.F. Adley Auditorium. And coming out of discussions of the Green Paper, then there was the general election, of course. And the Progressive Liberal Party got the mandate to lead the country to independence. But we were sensitive about the concerns about what the Bahamians had. I'll always remember meeting at Sims, Long Island, a very distinguished and very scholarly gentleman. The meeting was over and it was a beautiful turnout, people very receptive and asked a few questions. But the final question was asked by a Long Islander named Mr. Horton, whose son, I think, served as Controller of Customs. Mr. Horton got up and asked Sir Lyndon one question: we can keep the Queen? Now that was important to him. And Sir Lyndon said, probably, but the whole purpose of what I'm saying is that we were mindful of what the Bahamian people thought about. We also knew that Bahamians were very protective of their land. Many outspoken Bahamians. Loftus doesn't stand alone, in terms of his fervor about Bahamian and who should be citizens. And when we think of this Constitution and we think of the possible changes that we may go through in the next some time from now, you have to remember this Constitution has served this country well. It has kept us. It has kept us a stable country. The economy has grown. The professional class have mushroomed. And evident as what you can see on Carmichael Road, the growth of Bahamians in business, the wonderful young people you see here, they're all products of this Constitution. And you have to remember, too, that it has served us well.
We've had 4 changes of government. No serious constitutional challenges. And though there's grumbling about, on a personal level, when somebody who we know may not have been given citizenship or some other benefit, there has been no major outcry on any of the articles of the Constitution. But we are challenged now to chart the course for the next 40 years and beyond. And we have to satisfy ourselves, are there changes that ought to be made? Should we hold on to the monarchy? I say no. Are there other changes that ought to be made, as embodied in some of these questions? The power of the executive. Now, to the answer to the question which I would like to say, I believe that the Senate, as was originally conceived, was intended to be a senior body made up of individual in the main who could perhaps bring a new and mature dimension to some of the debates which took place in the House of Assembly. I think to a large degree it has become a place where we assign individuals who have failed to get elected to the House of Assembly. I don't think that was the intent. I think the intent was to find individuals, to give voice to business, to give voice to trade unionists if they are not in the House, to give voice to other thought processes that may exist in the country, to find a younger Miles Monroe and say, do you want to be in the Senate? So that the voice, the clarion voice he has, can be heard and it is covered, because we know the press we have usually only covered what people say if they're in the House of Assembly or in the Senate. But I think we have strayed from strictly from the original intent, and we have to look very closely. If we are to retain it, we have to more clearly define that it plays the role in the Bahamas that the House of Lords plays in the United Kingdom. I think that is what it was intended to be. Thank you very much for inviting me, and this has been a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. We would love to extend this further, but time has kind of gotten away from us. I'll invite, before you leave the... Yes, sir, please.
I just want to make a brief statement, and it is to say this, that I was there at the table at Marlborough House when the issue of citizenship was discussed, and I remember that the British delegation, or the British government, wanted us to accept a category of persons as Bahamian citizens that we did not want to accept. We had disagreements at the Constitutional Conference between the opposition and the government, but on this issue of citizenship, the government and the opposition were totally and completely together in opposition to the British government. Now, I know that because I was there. And the minutes of the Constitutional Conference will bear that out. That's all I wanted to say, sir.
Thank you very much.
What the British want us to do was to accept. You see, every time any country became independent, they would then, if they don't want to be a citizen of that country, they would go to the nearest British colony and register there. They wanted us to accept those. We wanted to find out, tell us something about this. Do you have a record of it? It says they couldn't find a record. So in the end, I think when we left, we said, all right, those who apply, we'll see what we can do. But anyone who's trying to pull a fast one on you sometimes forget things. They forget the access to advertise. So we never invited anyone to come in. And so it ended like that. So when they went back, I think, later on, I think the question arose, did you advertise? We said, no, we never discussed that. And I think that's how it went. I think they were afraid of having Hong Kong was coming on stream. Yeah. I think Hong Kong was coming on stream. They were afraid of that.
Thank you very much. We'll invite Dr. Monroe. Just before you leave the podium, Dr. Monroe will wrap up this portion of the program.
You may be seated. You may be seated. Thank you very much. His Excellency, Sir Arthur Foulkes, in one statement, defined this entire day. He said, I know because I was there. That's why we're here today. I hope that the media that's here are recording all of this. We are going to make this available to all the media houses because one of my colleagues back there, a photographer, said to me, the horses are talking today. In other words, if you want the truth, get it from the horse's mouth. Give God a hand for the stallions. A nation is really a community of people who are committed to a common heritage, language, land, jurisprudence, ideals, common values, and governance, and usually submitted to one deity. The three pillars of any country are freedom, which describes the right to pursue personal aspirations and practice individual convictions within the boundaries of constitutional law. The second pillar is independence, which is the national right of a people to determine their national destiny, to pursue their national aspirations, and to practice their national ideals within the context of their national constitutional laws. And the third pillar of a nation is sovereignty. And sovereignty is the right of a people to self-governance, supreme national authority, not ruled by any other state, or, may I add, any other institution. A nation, therefore, is an independent expression of humans expressing their commitment to their ideals. 40 years ago, the Bahamas was born. The question is, why are nations created? The answer is clear to me. I will quote it from the most important constitutional document in the world. It says, "From one man, God created every nation of men, that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he determines the times set for them and the exact places where they should live. God did this, and here's the reason it says, so that men would seek him, and if perhaps reach out, can find him. That's astonishing. It says God created nations and even chose the people and the places where they should live so that men may know him. Therefore, the reason why the Bahamas was born is not for people to know our beaches, our casinos, our sunshine, and our beautiful people, but really for them, when they come here, to know God. So anything that we do as a country, anything that we produce as a nation, any standard we embrace as a country, any ideals that we adopt, must introduce people to God. The first and most important component in nation building is law, not the government. Law is the source of national cohesion. Law is the fabric in which national life is woven. Law is the foundational source of community creation. It is law that is the mother that gives birth to civil society. The key to nation building, therefore, is the constitutional law. The Constitution is the collective aspirations, desires, and the national vision of the people. The Constitution is the source of law. Law is created to protect the Constitution. Judges are appointed to protect the law. Lawyers are stewards of the law. Policemen and our other agencies that enforce law are supposed to make sure the law is carried out. But most importantly, the citizens are supposed to be the keepers and obedient to the law. True civilized nations are not ruled by government. They are ruled by law. Civil societies are built on the concept of, and I quote, the rule of law, not the rule of a prime minister or the rule of a party. The law is more important than the government. The law is more important than the Constitution itself. The law protects the Constitution. The law protects the promises and the rights and the privileges made in the Constitution. The law protects the nation from extinction. And therefore, as we celebrate this Constitutional Day with our fathers who have changed us in the last hour, the principal purpose for them being here is to remind us that the law is to establish and maintain order in a country. The greatest principle in life is principles. And principles and laws govern the function of a people. They regulate our relationships. They protect entities in our country. The law guarantees effectiveness and national success. It is the law that maximizes and protects the national potential of a people. The foundation of all true nations is law. Nations are built on law and sustained by law. The quality of life in a country is determined by the law. National life is protected by law. All societies must adhere to law. The community is produced by law. And with that in mind, I want to close this segment with a few comments about our democracy. The fundamental principles and tenets of democracy framed by the thinkers of the Western world's evolution from dictatorships and oppressive regimes and tyrants was based on man's noble attempt to establish a governing ideal and system that would protect against abuse or the attainment of absolute power over people. This is why democracy was invented. In my humble view, democracy is the most appropriate form of government in the development and preservation of a free and fair society. The protective safeguards of checks and balances inherent in the concept of separation of powers in democracy are the source of security, and they provide a sense of safety for the people and the citizens. One of the most vital components embedded in the philosophical and ideological framework of democracy is the fundamental rights of the individual and the protection of those fundamental rights within the context of a whole society. Do you know that in democracy, this right to protect the individual's fundamental human rights is equally balanced by the principle of majority versus minority concept? This tension between the ideas of the majority versus the minority is the greatest contention within the concept of democracy, as it creates a contradiction of social normalcy. It also creates a contradiction of national convictions. The idea of the majority being the guide of what is considered normal in a society is yet contradicted by the necessity of protecting the perspective of the minority, which seem to create some issues. First, the will of the majority can become a victim of and suffer at the mercy of the minority. And what that means is, even though the majority may agree on something, they are still a victim of the protection of what the minority thinks. This is a challenge of democracy. Secondly, the will of the majority can be defined as a form of discrimination to the minority, which is a contradiction and a challenge. Thirdly, there is no establishment of absolutes as it relates to truth, right, and acceptable behavior in democracy. What is normal or natural becomes relative in pure democracy. In other words, if the majority agrees on an issue, even though it may be morally wrong, it becomes acceptable. Which means that built into democracy is its own moral demise. Fourthly, the perception that the recognition of established fundamental, traditional, or natural laws that through the test of time are proven beneficial and good for the development and the preservation of an orderly society can become fluid and unstable. In other words, certain things we believed in the Bahamas for the last 50 years could become questionable if the majority changed their minds. And finally, the measure of social standards and civil boundaries, acceptable behavior, and customary norms are all at the mercy of the human. We can decide what is right or wrong, not God. And in my conclusion, therefore, on this Constitution Day, with our fathers by our side, I believe that democracy in its ideal sense is fundamentally humanism, by which I mean the human becomes the measure of all things, and mankind serves as the ultimate authority and takes the place of a divine power within the prerogative to change any custom, tradition, or standard, or law, or definition as suits their preference at the time.